there was a color of wealth report done specifically for Los Angeles, and it was one of the first reports to actually separate immigrant blacks and American-born blacks.
I see.
The wealth level, the net wealth level for liquid for African Americans or ADOS people was $200, and black immigrants, Nigerians, was $60,000. $60,000.
Yeah, that's.
And they just got here.
Not even comparable.
Right, it's not even comparable, right? But these people, they get here based on education, while this country undereducates us, and doesn't fund our schools properly. So we're not saying we don't want these people here. We're saying you have to look at our numbers, because then when you look at our numbers and see us for what it really is, then you're forced to do something about it. But when you put us all as just racially black and you clump those numbers together,
white versus black, then
white versus black, right? Then it looks like we're doing better. Even 17,000 is still a low number, and it's terrible. Yep. But it still doesn't show that here in Los Angeles, liquid wealth were worth $200. Right. And I believe the other statistic is 50% of African Americans or ADOS people are worth less than $1. There's another study in Florida, they're worth $8. Yeah. It's like, those are real numbers. Like, that's what we really have to attack, and it's just unfair.
So I guess my next question, and we've briefly talked about this before, would be then the mechanism to do that, because obviously people yelling at social media, etc. And my thing is that do we have a national reckoning like the Germans did for Nazi Germany after that, and then also South Africa did after apartheid with their reconciliation? We still haven't had that. So is that what it needs to happen for that to even be visible? You know, because how do you get a national conversation around something like that is not at the national level? You know, if it's not at a national level with courts and backing and et cetera, XYZ 1, 2, and 3, how are you ever going to get the wealth? Like, it doesn't seem likely at all if people just keep doing the status quo,
I mean, and it definitely doesn't help when people are trying to stifle the voice of these movements, right? When we're trying to really push this forward. I believe we got American descendants of slavery on the census. I filled out my census, but
for 2020.
For 2020, it for the first time does distinguish between the two.
Interesting.
Yeah. That's one.
So actual numbers will start coming.
Hopefully, but if people fill them out right, we have and we have other movements of black folks against it. There are a lot of Pan-Africanists that feel like we are one and blah, blah, blah. And it's like, I get it, and that's great in a real utopian world. But black folks who are really trying to get reparations or even to get repair, right? The first step, I'm a paralegal. The first step in a lawsuit, you have to show standing that you have the right to sue. Yeah. You have to show that you are a victim of all of these different atrocities by this country. You have to show that your people were here way before 1960. In 1965 Immigration Act is when we really had the real surge of immigration from other countries. So if your grandparents were born here, likely you're a descendant of slaves. If you're a black person, you know. So it's very easy, but there are a lot of people who are pushing for Pan-Africanism, and so we have this in the black community.
Well, but is that just a? Because it seems like as soon as I hear that, it seems like it's just a normative definition distinction of like yes, philosophically, yes, we're all together. You know what I mean? All you and I, like, we're all brothers and sisters. We're all humans.
I mean, if you want to say that, like, everyone is a descendant of Eve, to a certain extent.
And so my thing is like, but in the policy, and when you're talking brass tacks of like, what exactly are we wanting in terms of goals, and then how to do that, then it has to come down to something like a reparations or like a ADOS or things like that.
Right. I mean, we need everyone on our side. We need people to really see the numbers, like the numbers I gave you in regards to the Color of Wealth report of Los Angeles.
And I'll link that in the show notes too.
That report, we need everybody to know these numbers to understand why it's important to make the distinction. It's not about xenophobia. It's not about hatred of other black people. It's about we are doing poorly. When you go to prisons, these are ADOS black men. These are not Nigerian black men. These are not Ethiopian black men. And that is by design, because the immigrants that they allow in, they're using them to mask our failure. And
well, they're very specialized.
Yeah,
I see
they're
what you're
very
saying.
specialized. But I mean, like the way the country is using them, and we need also immigrants to be in alignment with our movement too, because they should understand our plight and say, you know what? No, we need to show that this specific ethnicity of Black people are not progressing. And why? You know, it's about the country actually trying to, you know, act like their hands are clean. And they're not. You owe us a certain amount of money. It's a minimum of $17 trillion. And that's just cash. We still need other reparative programs, such as lineage therapy. We need educational grants, and healthcare. There's a lot that we need. Just a cash check is not going to fix everything, but you owe us that money.
But you're going to take the check.
We gonna cash that check, and we need that money because that's going to allow us to actually practice group economics. You know, a lot of other communities are able to hold on to the money that they make because they produce a lot of things that they use. We don't have the money to actually produce. We only have enough money to consume. When people talk about how much money Black people spend, but that's because those are necessities. That's like our laundry detergent, groceries, your rent, your mortgage, your car. You kind of need a car. You kind of need a car. But it's like beyond that, no, we're not really spending frivolously because we don't have that excess income. We don't have enough to produce, to mass produce for our people what we need.
And that's been a big thing that I've even known is like Black savings. You know, like that's been a big thing for hundreds of years.
What's a savings?
It's all, well, it's just like save as much as you can, as much as possible, under the mat, under the mattress, like anywhere. This bank account, that bank account. But then again, when you start talking about that,
it's like saving is a luxury. Like if I'm working one of these jobs that wanted to pay me $17 an hour, I'm a single mom. I went to college still, got a student loan debt, and have to pay $1,800 to $2,000 a month for just an apartment, just here in Los Angeles. Need a car, paying for childcare. What's the savings? Exactly. It's ridiculous. That's kind of a privilege that people have that they don't pay attention to.
Sure. Well, then, so some of these privileges must have been enough for you to want to do something about this, because this year you basically wrote in, you were a write-in candidate for LA City Council District 8. So District 8 is notably the Crenshaw District, Limerick Park, excuse me. Limerick. Baldwin Hills, West Adams, kind of that area. And Nipsey Hussle is from around that area. He had his flagship store there. There's notably no African American women on the city council. Notably. So not just like what was your experience and like what were your goals, but how can we better represent the local community in politics moving forward?
Yeah, absolutely. I like the story I was telling you about, like going to the grocery stores and seeing like the different treatment. I decided to, I was working at a nonprofit that specialized in helping Black people get employed. And I was asked to run, well, not just me, there was an announcement that was like, hey, there's neighborhood council meetings happening and they have some vacancies, like, is anyone interested in running? And I thought about it, and I was like, while I'm here and I'm looking at these numbers of unemployment, like Black folks are 40% unemployed in the Los Angeles area. So I was like, okay, well, how do I do something about it? So I decided to run. Secretary was open. I won that seat. But neighborhood council here, we're direct liaisons to LA City Council from the community. We're supposed to take the demands of the community to LA City Council. And so I get in, and I'm just noticing all the BS. I was like, wait, why are we talking about what the councilman wants, what the councilman said? What's happening?
You're in the belly of the beast, though.
Man, I was so not expecting that.
Was that the naivety? Or yes, what was that?
No, absolutely. It was like, I'm going to work for the people, and I'm just going to take, like, the demands of the people. We're doing this, I was like, what is happening? And I had to make an announcement, and they were like, okay, calm down, AOC. Like, because I was very fiery, and I was like, this is not okay, and this is not the councilman's space. We're supposed to take the demands from the people to the councilman. This was like my first day, and they're looking at me like, will you chill out? So there was one time, because I was working for this organization, I asked his aide, because they come and they do a report at our meetings, and I asked her for an updated jobs report. Now his office, should I name him or no? Okay, so our councilman is Marquise Harris Dawson, and so District 8. So we asked for a jobs report because he helped implement the targeted local hire program, which the targeted local hire program was supposed to give an allotment of 1,000 jobs specifically for Black people because we had such high unemployment in our community. So I asked, well, how many people have been hired just from this district, not even Black, not white, just from this district, how many have been hired? We have 40% unemployment just in that district, right? So she comes and gives a report and she goes, oh, we've hired over 600 people. I said, from this district? She said, yes. I said, from this district? And she's like, yes. And this is October. And I pull up my phone because he put an actual chart on his Instagram, and it said total the entire city has hired over 600 people. It was like 635, and they've only hired from the district. It was like 53 people. This is a misleading number. And I'm working directly with ex-cons and people who really need jobs and people who really are hurting. And Nipsey Hussle had just gotten killed. So a lot of people had jobs lined up or working with Nipsey Hussle, and all that shuts down.
Oh yeah, that was a big
it was a big deal. And I was just like, this is not okay. And not only is it not okay, your lack of urgency is not okay for the situation. And then you would come and mislead the people when giving your jobs report.
But that was like that shining a turd kind of thing. That like showing you guys, hey, this looks great, but it's like, not.
Are you kidding me? I said, no, check receipts. I was like, I got receipts, and I was like really upset. I left that meeting. I was like, I'm running for office. I don't have no money.
But we're doing this. I can't. This will not stand.
And I was, and it was like, if nothing else, we would at least have this conversation. Like, you need to get on your stuff about. Can we curse? No, I'm on. Okay, you need to get on your stuff about this targeted local hire program because people have applied. They're waiting, and you're giving out false numbers of how well you're doing. Why would you do that? And then you're upset about people committing crime. I have my friend Marcus who was getting stopped every day by the police. He's looking for jobs, but he can't find work, and he has a kid to take care of, and he gets arrested because he's got drugs on him. Yeah. This is the issue. We can't just keep popping folks for having drugs or selling drugs when we have elected officials who are in here playing games and giving us false numbers because they don't want us to do anything about it. So I decided to run. This was October. And it finally opened up in November. Yeah. And so I went and I filled out everything. I didn't know you had to do all that stuff. It was a real
like declare your candidacy.
Yeah, declare your candidacy. But I didn't know you had to go and get all these signatures in less than 20 days, which the system in itself is rigged because you have to have money to run. Yep. And it's like, look, if I'm an everyday person, not actually work a job, how am I supposed to get these signatures?
You don't.
Right. But, I got enough signatures, but of course they disqualify. It was 7 of us. It was 7 of us trying to get on the ballot. Only one got on the ballot, the incumbent. So it was 2 of us who decided, forget this, we're still going to run. People need to know what's happening. So I still ran, and I got a lot of traction toward the end. But of course, like if I had the money, I probably would have beat him, and he's someone who's only in office because he got 7,000 votes, because he ran in 2015. So the bar of entry
is not exactly that crazy.
Well, it's not that it isn't. If you get 50% plus 1 in the primary in LA City Council race, you win. You don't, there's no runoff.
Oh, I see what you're saying. Okay.
But he ran in 2015, which was an off year for the presidential election. So it's a low turnout. Only 12,000 people voted, and he got 7,000. Right. So, if I had enough funds, I could have, and I think in this round, he only got 30,000. So, if there was enough funding and if I had enough time, but...
Are you thinking about it next time?
I'll definitely consider running again, especially if I can get the funding. But, we definitely need more people, more young people to go out and run. There's too much corruption in LA City Council. Right. But in regards to the Black women conversation or the topic, only one in the history of LA City Council has ever sat on a board was Jan Perry. She's the only Black woman to ever be elected to LA City Council.
Wow.
And of course, she termed out though. But
and what year was that?
She termed out, I believe, in 2012.
Oh, okay. So
yeah,
still
so like 2000 to 2012. Yeah, but she's the only one.
Yeah, right.
But right now, we are not represented, and so we should be.
Yeah. That's one thing that is representation is one thing that we were talking about is like making the invisible visible. And one of the things that you mentioned before is jobs and homelessness and that kind of like mix. And so I'm going to put out one of these statistics. According to the Los Angeles Homelessness Service Authority, Black Angelenos represent over 40% of LA's homelessness population. And then again, for a little bit of more background, District 8, Leimert Park, et cetera, is very close to the new Inglewood football stadium.
Oh, yeah.
So then let's tie in like that jobs, what you were talking about, Marcus, the jobs guarantee for the local job task force or et cetera. Because the idea is that this new stadium comes in, billions of dollars, you got to build it, but then who's going to build it?
Right.
People in the community, out of state contractors, et cetera. And then so one of the things to then get that stadium to go into Inglewood was all the support that all these local jobs would then come, and then you would have people from West Adams, people from Baldwin Hills working at that stadium.
Right.
And but then that hasn't necessarily transpired.
No, not at all. And especially through the targeted local hire. So it's like even with the contractors, like they had to technically bid, and I believe you had to be local to bid on this project. But there is a contractor who is basically from like Oregon, but they opened up an office in 90043 in the zip code.
Yeah.
That office doesn't exist anymore. So it's like, where's the real due diligence? Like, who's approving these contracts, and who's making sure that these are real companies and not just a shell, so that they can qualify to apply. They're also claiming they can't find enough people, so they're hiring a lot of people from Orange County, from other places, and bringing in other contractors. There aren't local people working on these projects. Even when I worked for the nonprofit, there were people who had to actually go on construction sites and count the Black people, and there were nearly none. Like, you're not hiring from this community, which is the last like predominantly Black community in the area. You have no Black people. You know, they created a lot of loopholes, and the target local hire is not being enforced.
Yeah, and then that all goes back to, again, the politics of allowing it, because then that's just corruption.
Oh yeah, they definitely turn a blind eye, but it's like, how are they being punished when it's not being enforced? Are they being fined? Are they losing money? Nothing's happening.
And there's
to
no
these people.
Transparency or due diligence of keeping up with that in the public interest.
Right, but then this nonprofit has to actually come into existence
to do that work.
Yeah,
no kidding.
Why?
Yeah.
Why don't you created this program, this target local hire program. Why don't you have an enforcement arm in your office?
Right.
What are you guys doing?
Yeah, because if you think that you're going to have something without an enforcement arm, then how much? Yeah, it's a
right. Exactly. How effective is it going to be?
Not
it's
very.
It's just fueling gentrification. They're getting people out of there.